Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Preston here, and this is my late post-fight reaction to Sean Strickland defeating Khamzat Chimaev by a... But yeah, Sean Strickland, and stuff like that, you know what I mean, and stuff, you know, um, he beat Khamzat Chimaev by a split decision, and yeah, and stuff like that, you know what I mean, and that's the thing and stuff like that, you know what I mean, and stuff, he beat Khamzat Chimaev by a split decision and stuff like that, and yeah, and stuff like that, a really good fight, very entertaining, uh, and realistically, from the start of the fight, and stuff like that, of how Khamzat was wrestling Sean Strickland, I thought the fight was over, because in the first 2 rounds, Khamzat Chimaev was wrestling Sean Strickland, and was dominating the fight by wrestling Sean Strickland. After those 2 rounds, the next three rounds and stuff like that, you know what I mean? That's where Sean Strickland and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Basically, literally, well, I'm not, basically, what Sean Strickland did was that, what he needed to do, because Sean Strickland has pretty underrated takedown defense, because Strickland's a big dude. Strickland isn't an easy dude to take down, and shit like that, and if he's avoiding the takedown, he's not an easy dude to take down. And once Strickland started avoiding the takedown from Khamzat Chimaev, you know what I mean, that's where, he started realizing, if I could do this once, I could do it again. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. And that's where he basically kept the fight on the feet. And ever since he kept the fight on the feet, he dominated the fight. Well, I'm not going to say he dominated. Well, basically, he basically dominated on the feet, and stuff like that. It was competitive, but at the same time, the jab of Sean Strickland was one of the biggest reasons for the victory for Sean Strickland. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, because that jab was really good and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Strong, stiff, powerful, you know what I mean? And that's the thing and stuff like that, and he has length with that jab too, and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And that's the thing and stuff like that, but yeah, and stuff like that, you know what I mean? But overall and stuff like that, you know what I mean? That's what happened, in the third round. Fourth round was the same thing. Chimaev was still trying to get the takedown, but he couldn't get the takedown. And realistically, once Chimaev started realizing he couldn't really get the takedown, that's where Chimaev really started realizing this was going to be a scrap on the feet. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. But also, the one thing that I will say, Chimaev didn't really shoot for the takedown as much. I feel like if he would have shot for the takedown more times, I feel like he would have won this fight. Potentially, if he could have been successful at taking down Sean Strickland. But at the same time, the way of how Chimaev looked really good at taking down Dracus du Plessis, I mean, how the fuck would he be able to do that against Sean Strickland? You know what I mean? And that's the thing, and stuff like that, because overall and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Hold on, let me see if this is still recording. But yeah, and shit like that, and how the fuck, and shit like that, you know what I mean, and stuff, how the hell and shit like that, with Sean Strickland and stuff, or how the hell would, Sean Strickland win this fucking fight, bro? I'm just saying, because overall, it's just the way of how, I know realistically styles make fights, but Dracus du Plessis bullied Sean Strickland on the ground in the first fight. Dracus bullied Sean Strickland on the ground and took Sean Strickland's belt and shit like that when Dracus du Plessis would take down Sean Strickland to the ground. He took he dominated that fight in the first fight. Second fight, Drake is basically just pieced up Sean Strickland, showing that he doesn't have just better grappling skills. He also got the better hands than Sean Strickland. But evidently, and shit like, well, I mean, he did show that he did have pretty good striking skills, Drake is Duplessis, when, because Chimaev really's only chance was to grapple against Drake is Duplessis. So I'm just saying, so that kind of could question Chimaev's striking skills, even though Chimaev got some pretty good striking skills. I mean, as you can see, I mean, he busted up, he also busted up, Strickland's nose and shit like that, because we all know of how really good of a fighter Strickland is. Strickland was a champion before, and shit like that, you know what I mean? And now he's a champion again. He's a two-time champ. So we truly know of how really good Sean Strickland is. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, and stuff like that, but overall at the same time, yeah, the third, fourth, and fifth round, all Strickland. Chimaev couldn't do, wasn't looking for the takedown. He wasn't successful with the takedown. He couldn't get into the right distance for the takedown. All he was doing was running into a bunch of punches by Sean Strickland. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. But if Chimaev would have tried to look more for the takedown, could have looked more at being at more ways of how to take down Sean Strickland. You know what I mean? Because I feel like he was just trying to think that he was just gonna go in there and just roll up Sean Strickland like that, and just easily roll up Sean Strickland. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and stuff like that. But Sean Strickland pulled up a different way, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that, And in that kind of way, that's where Chimaev couldn't really do anything. I mean, he could have, but if he would have made a good switch of a game plan during that time, he would have won that fight. But he didn't make a switch of a game plan. He just was like, okay, well, Strickland wants to fight. If he wants to fight on the feet, then we could fight on the feet and stuff like that. I could also strike too and stuff like that. But obviously that didn't prove in his type of way, because he can't throw hands like Strickland. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and stuff like that. He can't throw hands like Strickland and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But yeah, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and stuff like that. But yeah, man, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that. But overall, Sean Strickland got the dub. I mean, both of these guys were throwing hands, and stuff like that. I mean, Chimaev was still landing the right, he was still landing combinations. But Strickland's jab, Strickland's overall boxing ability and stuff like that, is what won him the fight, and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Because he just looked more technically sound, and he kept the fight in his type of way without getting taken down in the last 3 rounds, you know what I mean? First 2 rounds was obviously Chimaev, you know what I mean? But then all of the last 3 rounds was Sean Strickland, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. So overall, in my scorecard, I had it 3 rounds to 2 in favor of Sean Strickland, and stuff like that. I felt like the 5th round was a close round, though, but I did feel like that Sean Strickland edged the round, and shit like that, and stuff, because overall, Chimaev started getting more kind of, let's say if this was like an 8-round fight, in the octagon, I feel like Chimaev could have found a way to pull through, and shit like that, because he was starting to connect more, and he was starting to find his range of what he needed to find, and stuff like that, in the 5th round, and stuff like that, you know what I mean, but it's just, he didn't really have enough time, because Strickland was already landing his shots, was already doing what he was doing, and he was already switching the game plans, all that, and stuff like that, so Khamzat was already behind on everything and stuff like that. But he didn't get dominated. He didn't get dominated, you know, and stuff like that. But Strickland definitely won this fight. You know, if Chimaev would have looked for the takedown more times instead of avoiding looking for the takedown and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Then he would have won this fight, you know, because Chimaev's really quick on getting those takedowns. Like, you know, it doesn't matter if you got good footwork or anything. Well, I mean, it kind of matters. Footwork is everything and shit like that, you know. And if you can avoid, you know, the takedown with footwork and stuff like that, you know, then that's the thing. But if you can have really good speed and timing with your wrestling skill like Khamzat Chimaev, then you can do that. Then you can use that skill against anybody. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that. But you have to make sure that you're actually going to take down Strickland. Now, if he can't take down Strickland, it's going to be the same result, or Strickland is going to look more dominant in the next fight and stuff like that, you know, because most likely they're going to be fighting each other again, you know what I mean, and that's the thing, you know, and stuff like that, you know what I mean, and yeah, you know, and so, because Chimaev is still a really good fighter, obviously, with him beating Dricus Du Plessis, we know of how really good of a fighter he is. You know what I mean? And that's the thing and shit like that. You know what I mean? I mean, anything can happen, but it's just more of like, at the same time, I mean, that's really hard to say against somebody so elite like Khamzat Chimaev. This is the UFC, you know what I mean? It's hard to keep your undefeated record. You know what I mean? Who knows if Ilya Topuria is gonna keep his undefeated record against Justin Gaethje? You know what I mean? And that's the thing and stuff like that, you know? And I'm just saying and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So, overall and shit like that, that's the thing and shit, you know, and stuff like that, you know? And yeah, you know, and stuff like that, you know, so, yeah, man, and shit like that, you know what I mean, and that's the thing, man, and shit, you know, and stuff like that, you know, but, overall, that's my final thoughts on this fight. I thought that the fight was a perfect decision. I thought Sean Strickland deserved the win. Other than that, I feel like it could have been a draw, maybe, and shit like that, you know, but other than that and stuff like that, I mean, I feel like Strickland winning was a better result than it being a draw or it being any other result. I felt like Strickland clearly won this fight. You know, in a close brawl, in a close fight, but Strickland did win this fight. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. But thank y'all for watching this video. Again, also thank you MMA Crazy for letting me borrow this photo. You know, I watch your videos all the time, you know, and stuff like that. You got amazing content. And yeah, you know, but thank y'all for watching this video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'm Preston. Peace out, man.